Hey, welcome to a new app. I'm excited to start coding again with you. Please go to programmer100.pythonanywhere.com. Let's suppose that this webpage publishes tours about our favorite band, favorite music band. Now, as a Python programmer, we want to be the first ones to know when a new tour is published on this webpage. So what we do is we write a program which will notify us by email as soon as a tour is published on this webpage. That's what this app consists of. So this is about web scraping. So web scraping is scraping, so extracting information from web pages. So in this particular case, we're going to be scraping this part here of this web page, because sometimes if you reload this page, you keep reloading it, sometimes you may see that the page has published a new tour. For example, this band, Thanks Suave, that's the location and that's the date when the band will play. So as soon as a new tour is published, we're going to send out an email to ourselves so that we know, and then we can buy tickets afterwards. So this is about web scraping. How web scraping works exactly, that is something that I'll teach you in the next videos, and then in the videos after that we start coding that in Python. Now, in addition to web scraping, this app will also include SQL databases. So you will learn web scraping and SQL as well. So please don't miss this app. With that, I'll see you in the next videos. Thanks. Welcome to today's programming concept. Today we're going to talk about web scraping. So please go to programmer100.pythonanywhere.com and then go to the tools page. Now here in the tools page you may see this band. A new tour has been published, or you may see no upcoming tours. Either way is fine. So web scraping, what is web scraping? Web scraping is about extracting information from a web page and storing it as structured data in a text file or CSV file or Excel file or SQL database, so that you can use those data later for other purposes. So web scraping consists of two parts. The first part is extracting the information from a web page, and that information can be raw, it's not well structured. But then in the second phase, you parse that information, you filter out unnecessary data such as commas or other symbols and characters there might be there in the data you got in the first phase. And then, so in this second phase, you actually create data in a well-structured format and store that data in text file or SQL or CSV. So extract and store, these are the two phases. Now, how is all this possible? How does Python do these two phases? Well, the extraction phase of the web scraping process is about getting the URL of a web page, giving it to Python, and then Python, what Python does is it visits this web page on the background, and then Python looks at the page source of this web page. So even in a browser you can view the page source by right-clicking, for example, on Google Chrome, and go to view page source, and that will show you the HTML code which constructs this web page. So Python will look at this code, and then we will give Python some instructions. For example, give me the content which is inside the h1 tags which have this display timer, for example. So Python will extract this information, right? It will store it as a string. Now that was the first phase. In the second phase then, we can parse this string, we can extract the date from that, we can extract the name of the band here, the city where the band is playing, and so on. And then we can store that information in a well-structured format. In our case, we'll store it in SQL databases. but also in text files as well. We will try both versions. If you don't know what HTML is, please remember that we did have a lecture in day 29 that was a programming concept of the day. So it could be beneficial if you knew some HTML already. So that video is enough. Because by knowing HTML, you know what instructions to give to Python. You understand that this, for example, is an h1 tag, and it starts here and it ends in here. So it's good to know some HTML, but it's not a requirement. So that should give you a basic understanding of what web scraping consists of. So with that, we're ready to go into Python and code. So I'll see you in the next video. Hey, welcome back. Let's start coding. So I've created a PyCharm project, a new PyCharm project, and a main.py file. So how do we approach this app? Always think about whether the app has a graphical user interface or not. So does it have a graphical web or desktop interface? The answer is no. So the user is not going to interact with this app through graphical widgets such as buttons and text boxes, etc. Therefore, we don't really need to create a sketch of the graphical user interface. That means we can think about approaching this program, about coding this program, by thinking about how do we go from the input data to the output data. So what are the input data in the first place? The input data is this page here in programmer100pythonanywhere.com/tours. So this is the input data, right? And we have this URL as input data. That's what we're going to give to Python. So Python will get that URL. It will extract that information. So whatever is displayed at this place here of the web page. And then the output data will be in a form of a text file for now. So for today, we're going to store the data as text files inside text files. Tomorrow, after we have the program built, after we have the functions, tomorrow we're going to change the program, the functions, so that they can store the data in SQL databases. So it's good to take things step by step. It's good that you first understand what this program does, you know the program well, and then tomorrow you can change the program by implementing SQL. So that means you can better understand what SQL is because you know what this program does. I hope that makes sense. So let's start by creating a URL variable in here and paste that URL, right? So that includes the /tour/part. You can also find this URL touched in the lecture resources, so you don't have to type it in for convenience. Now the question is, how do we extract information from this web page? Well, for that we need two libraries. One is requests, and the other is selector lib. The request library will get the source code, the page source of this web page, and store it in Python as a string. So the page source, again, is the one that you see when you right-click. Sorry, don't select anything, so right-click somewhere in the page outside. So that is the page source. So requests will be able to get that as and store it as a string. Then selector lib will extract only particular information from all that source code, from that HTML source code. So let's go ahead and install requests and install selector lib. You can do that either through the terminal or through the Python packages, whatever you prefer. If you do it through the terminal, make sure that venv is here. That means the virtual environment is activated. And then do pip install requests, so it should end with an S, press enter, and that should install the request library. Then please install selector lib with pip install selector lib, no spaces, inside selector lib. So that was successful as well. So let's close this, and again we need to go from the input data to the output data. So this is the first input we have, and we need to do the next step, which is getting the page source of this. So since this app consists of different processes such as scraping, so extracting the information, parsing that information, storing in text files or SQL, then it's good to start with functions. So start defining functions. For example, define a scrape function. So this will serve the purpose of scrape the page source from the URL, right? So it should do one thing and do it well. And this should get as input a URL, so that's a parameter, and then in here you say response is equal to requests.get, so that's library, and here we provide the URL variable. Now you could write this function in a separate file, right? But I would say don't stress, so just you can start writing functions in your main.py file, and then you can simply move them out in a separate file if you think that this file is getting too big. So just start writing code wherever, and then you can think about that later. Right, then you want to get the text, so the page source, which is this. Or you can say source here if that makes more sense to you. And then response.text. And yeah, let's return the source code first, so this variable. And then let's call the function down here. So if name is equal with main, then scrape URL. So that variable, so that string will go as the argument value for this function. And so this function will get that argument, that string. It will provide it in here. It will extract the text from that web page and return us the text. So let's print out this output and then run. Right, so that's the output. Now, to know if you got this right, try to look for this h1 tag. So this should say either no upcoming tours, which is fine, or it should display a band, so an event, a tour, an event basically. So either way is fine, it means it's working fine, you were able to access that page. If it doesn't work, please go to the lecture resources and download the headers.txt file. So that file contains some headers, so please copy that and you want to paste that in here. Even if you didn't get an error here, if you got this data correctly, you can still do this, because the headers will tell the web server which hosts this web page. These headers will tell the web server that this script is actually a browser, so it's behaving like a browser, because some servers, they don't like scripts programs. So by having this header, sometimes it fixes the issue. And so these headers now should be supplied to this get method. So you say headers here, or headers equal to headers, to be more explicit, and run again, and you should see the same output, basically. So try to make sure that h1 tag is there, this one, and this. So this time it's no upcoming tours because the web page changes this content continuously during the day. Right, so that is how to extract the page source. Now let's see how we can get only the value between those h tags. So let's do that in the next video using selector lib. I'll see you there. Hey, welcome back. In the previous video we were able to get the page source of the web page we want to scrape. So that's a complete HTML code that represents that web page. Now in this video we want to extract only the information that we need out of that page. And the information that we need is this part here, which sometimes looks like this, other times it may look like no upcoming tours, so this text is changing when you load the web page at different times during the day. By loading, I mean either through your browser, like this, loading it, or when Python loads it. So when you execute your script, Python loads the web page, and we want to know what it is at this position of the page, what text it is there. So we want to get the text. Now, the page source that we get in the command line, it's not very usable because it's hard to read, right? It is better to actually go to your favorite browser, such as Google Chrome. I do recommend you Google Chrome, but any browser will do, and right click and go to view page source. So this is the same code that you also see in the command line, but here it is highlighted. So we have the syntax highlighting here, which your browser applies to the code, so it's easier for us to understand what's going on here. So you might want to look for that text. In my case it is thanks Suave, so that's the event that is happening. Or another better way, instead of going to view page source, what you want to do is you want to move your cursor on top of the section you want to extract, which is here in my case, and you want to right click there, and then you want to go to inspect, and that will take you exactly at that HTML tag representing that particular text. So you see here. So if you expand this, this is also the page source, so it's the same text. So this view here is even better because you can expand these elements and so on. So it's easier to navigate. The next, what we want to do is, you want to look at the ID value here. We need this because this ID uniquely represents this tag here. So we need to tell Python that, oh, give me the text which has this ID. And then Python, through selector lib, through the selector lib library, Python will get this text by looking at this display timer. So let's do this. Let's go to our code, and you can either expand your scrape function or you can create another function called extract. This can take a source argument, which is the text, the string representing the page source, and then we want to access the extractor class, and out of that class I access the from YML file method. Now usually we do something like this. We instantiate that class, we create an object instance of that class, But sometimes this is different, and this is something that you'll understand in the object-oriented programming sections later on in the course, when I explain your classes and OOP, so object-oriented programming. So for now, just don't worry about this. This is a class method, so a method of that class, and so we call that method here. And then this method now takes as argument the path to a YML file. Let's call this file extract.yml, and this file now should be created in the project directory. So go to File and write extract.yml. And here we will write tools, a colon, press enter, and then in here say CSS, colon, single quotes, a hash symbol, and display timer. I'll explain you what this is. So for now, just please type it in and then go here. So make sure that this name here reflects that name. So that file should be in the project directory, in the same directory with main.py. And so this will be the extractor, right? And then from the extractor, we need to extract something else. So do extractor dot extract, and here you pass the source. And out of that, we do tools with this syntax, so like similar to list indexing. And then return value. Now let's call this function extract the source. What is the source? Well, the source is returned from the scrape function. That means we say scraped here is equal to the scrape function call. So the URL goes to the scrape function returns the source. So that's a scraped source, and then in extract we provide the scraped variable, that variable in here. And let's say extracted is equal to that, and then we print out extracted. Alright, so let's run this and see what we get as output. Right, so no upcoming tours. So we extracted that content successfully. If you run it again, perhaps you'll get one of the events. So which is the purpose of this app? This app should run continuously. Yeah, there we go, until it finds a new event, and then we send an email to the users, to ourselves basically, that a new event was found. So if you got some errors, please double check that this reflects that file path, YML, the extension, be careful, and the content of this looks like this. So let me explain what this is. Tours is just a name we give to this. You can write whatever you like, but then this tours has to reflect this here, right? Because this part will return a dictionary, and that dictionary will contain a key called tours. So that is the key that the dictionary gets from here, and that key will contain as value the value that is in the tags with ID display timer. So the ID, remember, was display timer of this tag. That's why I wrote here display timer. Now, there's another way to get that CSS part that I wrote here, so the ID. Another way is to right click over here. So let's do it again. So that's the web page, right? We right click here, we go to inspect then we find where this is as an HTML element, so it's here. Then we right click here, and then we go to copy, and then we go to copy selector. So if you copy that, what you'll get in your clipboard will be that display timer. So just paste it, for example, here. You see, that's the display timer. So that's the ID that your browser gives you for that particular elements. So the second way that I just show you by right clicking here and going to copy and copy selector, this is a more standard way because sometimes web pages might be more complex, so it's not easy to realize, to find out what the ID is actually. So what you want to do is always find where that text is, find the elements here in the inspector tool, and then right click and go to copy and copy styles, and then of course paste that in here. And that's the code, the complete code that extracts that value. Now in the next video we want to work on storing these data somewhere, and we'll start by storing them in text files. So let's do that in the next video. See you there. In the previous video we were able to extract a particular value from the web page, this value. Now let's think about how do we approach the issue of sending out an email when a new event is published on the website. So let's go at the end of our script in here and try to find out some logic how we could do this. So extracted is the variable which contains the value we're looking for. So perhaps if we could say if extracted is not equal to no upcoming tours, or wherever the value is for no upcoming tours, because sometimes we get no upcoming tours in here, then we send out an email with trigger function, which we could define in here or in another Python script. For example, send email. Let's keep it here just for simplicity for now. We can move it out in another file later. So let's say print email was sent. Of course, we will replace this line. This is just a dummy line for now, so we'll replace it with actual code which sends out an email. But for now, let's see the functionality of this. So send email when this is no upcoming tours. Let's run this. Yep, so this is what we got. Actually, it's not what we expected, what I expected, because you see this says no upcoming tours, but if this was no upcoming tours, we don't want this email to be sent out, right? So we only want to send out an email when this is different from that, but the actual value on the website is with lowercase letters, lowercase u and lowercase t. So let's run this again. Right, so now we have an event, and then the email was sent. So let's run it again. No upcoming tours, no email was sent. You see no output of the email function this time. So for now, we're simply executing this function from PyChart manually. But what we normally want to do to make this a real app, a real world app, is that we want to put this script, this program, on a server which runs 24/7, and then that server will execute the script, say, every 1 minute, depending on how much accuracy, how much precision you want. So you can have it 1 minute or every day and so on. So you can schedule this script for execution, and that server will run the script and it will check every day if a new event is found and send you an email. But there is a problem here. So let's suppose that a new event was published on the website, all right? For example, thanks Suave. And so your Python program will send you an email, but then tomorrow the server will run again that program. And again, the server will find that this value here is different from this string, right? So again, the server will send you a second email the next day. And then the day after that, it will send you again an email. So perhaps this is not the behavior you want. Perhaps you want that if a new event is published, you only want to get an email once. You don't want to get an email the next day for the second time or the third time. If that is something that you want, then you want to store the data somewhere. And then check here with another if conditional. So you can check, for example, if not extracted in, let's say you store the data in data.txt, send email. So basically we added two conditionals. First we see that if extracted is not this, and then we see that if extracted is not in that file. And this file is something that we will create now with another function. This not here can also be placed in here. That will make it clearer. It does the same thing, but this is more readable. If extracted not in data.txt, send email. So then we want to go perhaps in here and say define store extracted, and then we say with open data.txt in write mode as file.write extracted plus a break line, which is represented by \n. And so this function should also be called somewhere, right? We should execute it somewhere. So I think it should be executed somewhere in here. Yeah. So store the extracted. Let's create some break lines between these because we have all these underlines from PyCharm. PyCharm is complaining about PEP8 style. So this should be fine. Yeah, let's run this. Any errors? No. No upcoming tours, data.txt, no upcoming tours. And if we run the script again, what will happen is that this will overwrite the previous line, and this is not something that we want. We want to append. So in that case, we want to change the W here with A, right? So this time, if I run this, we'll see that the next lines will be added after the existing lines. So anytime you run the script, run once, twice, 3 times, and so on. So all these are stored in here. So what's happening is that now this is checking if extracted not in data.txt, and then we send out the email, right? So if I run this and we have this line in the data.txt, this email shouldn't be sent out. However, it was sent out this time. Why? Well, can you find why? So try to logic. Why did we get this error? Perhaps some of you know already, but the problem is that in here we shouldn't be checking for extracted in that string, because that is just a string, it's not a file, right? Python treats that as just a simple string, so we're checking basically if that text is inside that text. So what we should do instead is perhaps write another function here which says read extracted, and then we say with open data.txt in read mode as file, then return file.read. And then we get the contents in the content variable using that function. So we call that function with extracted as a variable, and then we check if extracted in content, right? So let's run again. So now lines of the IDE was found on the web page, but the email was not sent because this line was already in the data. So this is working fine, right? But it's not so efficient because we're getting all these data stored in this file unnecessarily. So perhaps we want to make this more efficient. So perhaps we don't want to store the data anytime the script is executed. So we don't want to run this function at this line, but perhaps we want to cut it from there and put it here. So we only store an event when the event is new. So let's actually delete all these, save the text file and run again. So what we've got is a new event, email is sent, because now there were no events in the new text file. And then we run again. This is another event, so it was thanks Suave, now it's lines of the IDE. So we got the email again. Let's run again. No upcoming tours. In that case, we don't get any data written in the text file. And if we run again, we've got this, so it's the same event, right? Same event as this one, so we don't get an email and we don't get any new data stored. So that, I think, should be the right way to do this. And that's the complete code. So what's next? Well, next we have to do two things. First, in the next video we will implement the send email function. So we will add the code here which sends out an email. And then second, which is tomorrow we're going to be working with SQL databases. So instead of storing data in text files, we want to make the process more professional, more advanced. We're going to store data in actual database tables, in table fields, in table columns, where we can have like different columns for the band name, for example, the location and the date, to store the date properly. By doing that, that also allows you perhaps to check on dates, if a date of an event has happened before, and so on. So SQL is a better way to store the data and manage them. So that is something we'll do tomorrow. In the next video, let's implement the email functionality. I'll see you there. As you saw in the previous video, if the content of the web page here is different from no upcoming tours, then the send email function is called. So in this video we want to go to the send email function definition and we want to place here the code which sends out an email. I do have the code in this .py file already, so we did cover sending out an email in day 23. So please go to day 23 if you haven't learned yet how to send out emails. If yes, you can just get that code from there, or you can just download the code from the lecture resources in this video for your convenience. So please get that code. So we import these two libraries, so I'll place them at the top here, and then the rest of the code, which is inside the send email function, goes in here. So I'll leave the print function and just place the rest in here. So message is something that should come as a parameter, So please make sure that your send email function also looks like this, and then make sure that instead of the string here goes your email Gmail password, please place your Gmail app password. So to get a Gmail app password, you should go to your Gmail account. So this will work only for Gmail accounts. So you should go to Gmail, go to this button, go to manage your Google account, and then go to security. Then you want to go down here to sign in to Google. You want to activate two-step verification first, and then go to this section after you activate two-step verification. Go to app passwords, and then create a new app with the other as option. Just write a name, for example, scraping, and press on generate. That should give you a Gmail app password. So copy that string and place it in here. So that is the password for the email sender. So the email account which will send out an email, and that will be the receiver. So in my case, I just place the same sender and the same receiver since I'm sending out emails from my Gmail account to my Gmail account. So this is fine. And let's call this function in here. So send email with a message as something like, hey, new event was found. So that should do it. So let's run the code. No upcoming tour, so this time no email was sent. Let's run again. Also this time there were no emails sent. So if you want to get an email, first make sure that there are no events here. So start from scratch basically. Delete those data from data.txt, save data.txt, and then run main.py again. No upcoming tours. Let's try again until we find an event. No upcoming tours. One more time. No upcoming tours. One more time. Yep, so we get this certificate issue here. Now, if you did get this error, the certificate verification error, then you want to go to Finder Applications and then locate Python, but locate the Python version that you're working on, and then click on this install certificates.command. So once you do that, then try to run the code again. So this time we got this lines of the IDE, a new event. So I should expect an email on my Gmail account. So there we go. Hey, new event was found. If you want to have a subject here, please go back to the video where we show how to send an email in day 23. As for today, we're done, so I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Welcome to the last video tutorial of today, and then in the next video I'll give you the exercise, the project for today. So in this video what we want to do is we want to implement a while loop here, somewhere in here, so that the while loop will execute these lines every X number of seconds or minutes using time.sleep. Let's try 2 seconds for now. You can change this to 3600 seconds and so on. So time is a library which should be imported. It is a standard library. And yeah, so what this will do now is that once you run the script will execute the scrape function over and over again. So it will always be checking for new tours every 2 seconds for events, tours, whatever we call it. So this is a way to have the script running non-stop so that it checks for data, it stores data wherever you like to do. The while loop is one solution. Another solution would be to use Python Anywhere. We covered Python Anywhere in day 28, so Python Anywhere is a service and they give you a server for you to use, and in that server you can schedule a program, a Python program for execution at a particular time every day. So in that server you can execute the Python program every day. So the server can execute it automatically. And that happens if you have a free plan on Python Anywhere. If you pay, then you can schedule the program at more closer intervals, at shorter intervals. Otherwise, the while loop is another solution. So to run your script, and you have to keep your computer turned on then, so that the program keeps running. And yep, that's what I wanted to show you in this video, and in the next one I'll give you the project for today. See you there. Welcome to today's project. For today, your task is to do some web scraping, and the web page you can use for today's project is programmer100.pythonanywhere.com. Now, previously we worked on the tours page, but today you will work on the home page, this one here, which shows this temperature. And if you reload this page, anytime you reload it, a new temperature will be loaded. Right? Sometimes it could be the same as previously, but that's fine. So these are like observations of the temperature, and this might change with time. So your task is to write a program which, when executed, it scrapes this value, so it extracts this value and stores that value in a text file. So let's say you run the program for the first time. The program will store this line in this text file. This also should contain the date. So that's the year, that's the month, that's the day of the month, the time, the minutes, and the seconds. So that is a timestamp when the scraping was executed, when the program was executed. And that is the value scraped at that particular time. And then if you run the program for the second time, then the new timestamp is stored in here together with the temperature, and these are split by commas. And so this is a text file, just a data.txt text file, and you should also have these date and temperature values here, which you can add manually, no problem. So you can create a data.txt file first, write this date, comma temperature here, and then let the program write the rest. This is one objective, to have this data stored in this text file. Now, an optional task, a second optional task, is to create this simple Streamlit app which graphs the temperature values that you have stored in this file here. So that's the optional part. If you like to go further with this, you can create this web app. So that's the date horizontally, and that's the temperature vertically. So good luck with this, and I'll show you my solution to the next video. Thanks. Hi, welcome back. In this video, I'll show you my solution to the temperature scraping project. So let me show you the script quickly if you want to take a look. That's my main.py file, which scrapes the data and stores them in data.txt. And that is the optional part where I plot the data using Streamlit. So let me go through the code now. I imported requests and selector lib. This does the scraping part, this does the parsing part, the extraction part, if you want to call it like that. And then we need the datetime class, which will create these datetimes. Then we have the URL and the header variables in here, the scrape function, which is the same as the one we wrote previously when we scraped those musical events, and the extract function is also the same, so it's working on the extract.yml file, which looks like this. Right? This is something you may really be interested to see. So I extracted this on Google Chrome, by right-clicking, going to inspect, and then right-clicking on the element and going to copy selector. And what I copied was this entire selector string, right? And then we've got the store function. So this is different from the function we had previously in the musical event scraping project. So this time I created a now string, and that is generated by datetime.now, which gives us a datetime object type, and out of that we extract the string. So basically converting the datetime into the string where we have the year, the month, the day, with dashes in between the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. So that is stored in now, and then I open the data.txt file. I construct an f string, so this will represent each line, right? Where we have the date, a comma, and then we have the temperature, and then a \n to make sure that the next line will be added on in a new line. And then I write that line to the file in here. This is for reading the file. Actually, we don't need this. This is just a leftover from the previous project, so I'm just deleting that. And then in here, we extract the page source. We get the extracted value, the temperature from that. We just print it out, and then we store that temperature value in the data.txt file. So store is this function in here. And then the optional part was to plot those data. So that's my webapp.py file. I used pandas to read the text file since these are CSV data, right? Comma, separated values. So these are separated by commas, so it makes sense to use the read CSV method of the pandas library. And then we create a figure using px.line. Px represents the express module of the Plotly library. So we create a figure object by using the date as the horizontal axis values and the temperature for the y-axis. So the date is the name of this column, right? The dates will be plotted along the x-axis and the temperatures along the y-axis, and we have the labels dictionary in here, and then we render that figure object in the web app using this line here, and that's it. So that was my solution to this project. Let's move on to the next day, so I'll see you tomorrow.